You're listening to the GRCC Provost podcast.
Greetings, persons of quality. Today we have the Provost podcast world premiere. I have now completed my 9th week as Provost. A number of people ask me, how's it going? What surprised you? I let them know that my goals have actually been fairly modest. Keep the college out of the Chronicle of Higher Education in any negative way, out of the local press in any negative way, and keep the power on. Of course, in week 3, the power went off. So I still think I'm doing pretty well. The structure of this podcast is tripartite. It's in 3 pieces. Not unlike the English faculty will recognize the 3-paragraph essay. Part 1 is news of some things happening on campus that I want faculty and staff to know about. I think you should know about them. They're all good things. A little later, I have Eric Mullen here to talk with me about all the efforts that the college makes to recruit students and keep our enrollment healthy in a time when all of the Michigan community colleges, or nearly all of them, are experiencing declines. And then the third part is, of course, the conclusion with some various announcements. Part 1, it's the news for this week. To keep with the theme of 3s, there are actually 3 important committees working on campus now that are doing some really important work. The first one I want to tell you about is the Distance Learning Faculty Advisory Board. They have come to AGC once already, the Academic Governing Council, presenting draft standards for our distance learning courses. Their second presentation will be at the AGC on Tuesday, March 10th. And the final presentation and hopefully the vote will occur on Tuesday, April 14th. The chair of that committee is Gary Brand, well known as an excellent faculty member in all ways, particularly online. That committee is also made up of 11 additional faculty and the college's instructional designer. The draft standards that they're bringing, I will read them to you. Overall design of the course is made clear to the student at the beginning of the course. Learning outcomes are measurable and are clearly stated. Assessment strategies are designed to evaluate student progress by reference to stated learning outcomes, to measure the effectiveness of student learning, and to be integral to the learning process. Instructional materials are sufficiently comprehensive to achieve course outcomes. Forms of instruction incorporated in the course motivate students and promote learning. Course navigation and technology support student engagement and ensure access to course components. Course facilitates student access to institutional support services essential to student success. There's a commitment to accessibility for all students that is demonstrated in the course. If you want to hear more about the draft distance learning standards, you should contact your department head or your AGC representative, or feel free to contact Gary Brand. I'm really happy with the work that the Distance Learning Faculty Advisory Board, also known as DLFAB, has done. The second group that has begun its work is also working under the aegis of the AGC, and this is the Committee to Review the College's Graduation Requirements. This team is co-chaired by Patty Trepkowski and Jennifer Batten. Some people have asked me, what actually are the graduation requirements at Grand Rapids Community College? There are 8. I'm going to have my trusty countdown robot introduce each.
Thanks, Lori. I will not let you down. Number 1.
The student has completed at least 60 credits of coursework.
Number 2.
The student has completed at least 15 credits of that coursework at GRCC.
Number 3.
The student has earned a cumulative GPA of at least 2.0 in all coursework completed at GRCC.
Number 4.
The student has earned at least 1 wellness credit. A maximum of 2 wellness credits may be applied toward any degree unless they are specified as a program requirement.
Number 5.
The student has earned credit for PS 110, Survey of American Government.
Number 6.
The student has earned at least 6 credits of English composition if seeking the AA, AS, AFA, AM, ADN, and AGS degrees.
Number 7.
The student has earned credit for the appropriate general education group distribution requirements for the degree they are seeking.
Number 8.
No courses below the 100 level will be used toward graduation requirements, including the minimum number of credits that need to be completed. A number of people have said, why now? Why are we taking up this issue now? And there are actually several reasons. For at least as long as I've been at the college, and I'm sure for even longer, there have been faculty who have raised the questions, and administrators too at times, why is it that we require X, Y, or Z? Why don't we require X, Y, or Z? It's time for us to engage that question as a faculty leadership body. In fact, each year, the AGC does a brainstorming exercise at the beginning of the academic year. And one of the issues that came up repeatedly this year was, let's review our graduation requirements. So frankly, one of the reasons is we haven't done this in a long time. A second reason is that faculty are asking us to do that. In doing a little research, trying to find out when the college last reviewed these requirements, I called Patty Trepkowski, who's been here about 37 years. And I said, Patty, when is the last time we did this? And she said, in her time here, she can't recall that we've ever done this in any comprehensive way. So it's time, and we are in the process, very early in the process of doing that. The team that is taking up this important issue has a faculty co-chair and an administrative co-chair. It is comprised of 12 additional faculty members and 3 additional administrators. They have already been doing some info gathering at AGC. They will also undertake some benchmarking of what is common at other community colleges, and they will have many opportunities for input for faculty in the upcoming months, well into next fall. Assuming that this work goes steadily and smoothly, that team hopes to have a proposal back to the Academic Governing Council for a vote before February 1st, 2016. If you have more questions about this, or you're interested in giving input, you should contact either Jennifer or Patty, your department head, or your AGC representative. The final committee actually arose out of the ad hoc budget committee recommendations as an important next step for the college to take. This committee is the class size committee. It's chaired by a faculty member, Frank Connor, the department head in psychology, and Patty Trepkowski. Certainly when you look at the origin of this committee, it's clear one of the aspects of class size that this group will look at is financial. What are the financial ramifications of various class sizes? But it's been clear to me for a number of years that we need to have some common understanding and common principles about how we make decisions about class size. The administration for all face-to-face classes has the decision-making authority for class size. We need to be more consistent and transparent in how we make those decisions, and so this committee is formed to create some principles that can guide us. The committee's charged with looking at the following and how it impacts class size: teaching strategies, student learning outcomes, technology requirements, socio-emotional needs, safety, accreditation standards, equipment access, existing infrastructure, and general classroom ambiance. So the goal is to improve our consistency and our transparency in our decision-making around class sizes. Final recommendations from this committee will come to the deans and the provost. It is planned by the end of fall 2015. This committee is still being assembled. If you have interest in giving feedback, contact Frank or Patty. If you have interest in participating, you can also contact them. So, distance learning class standards, college graduation requirements, and class size. I wanted to start out in my role as provost, engaging some of the more safe and non-controversial topics. So I chose these. Of course, these three committees are not without controversy. They will inevitably create some anxiety in faculty and staff as we consider change at the college. That's absolutely understandable. But in my 10 years here, I have seen time and time again our faculty taking on these kinds of issues, putting self-interest aside, and focusing on what's best for the students. And I have no doubt that these three committees will produce work that we will all be very, very proud of, and that will set a learning agenda for this college for years to come. Speaking of non-controversial topics, which are often discussed, I've heard, at bars, I had a thought recently while sharing a beverage with some friends. I realized that there were several pieces of really good news that I had to share. First of all, as you may have heard, GRCC received a $2.9 million grant from the Michigan Economic Development Corporation to purchase much-needed equipment for the School of Workforce Development. That includes equipment to start a brewing program, a craft brewing program at GRCC. That's pretty exciting news. It also includes all kinds of equipment for machine tool, welding, HVAC, automotive. There's an electric car that's part of the equipment that we're getting. This is very exciting, and I have to say that I toast the teamwork it took for the faculty and staff of Workforce Development, our grants office, and our finance office to make this grant a reality. That's the news for this week. Let's chat with Eric Mullen. I'm delighted to have as my first special guest on the Provost podcast, Eric Mullen. Eric, tell us what your title is and what you do at the college.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here, be on your first podcast. My mom always said I had a face for podcasts, so this should be a lot of fun. Thank you. Associate Dean of Enrollment Management, and I get to work with our admissions group, enrollment, orientation, and financial aid.
Tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you go to college? How have you sort of moved through your various careers? Sort of give us the synopsis.
Well, I always say that I'm born, raised, and can't get away from Grand Rapids. Growing up, I always had that mantra that it was bland Rapids and I wanted to leave here. So I struck out big and went to Aquinas College, did my undergraduate there, and had a great experience. And immediately after Aquinas, I started working here and still wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Wanted to work in education, hadn't really considered higher education as a pathway. But my time here working with, at the time, service learning and student activities just really put me in my position where I wanted to go. So after that, I worked at Aquinas for a little while, but wanted to come back here and had that opportunity in 2002.
So you've been here about 12 or 13 years?
Yep.
Okay, math is hard for me without a calculator. A lot of times people ask me, how do we get our message out? How do we make sure that students are coming here, particularly given the downturn we've seen in enrollment in the past 3 or 4 years? What are we doing to make sure students come here? So do we have someone who's in charge of recruitment
Yeah, absolutely. And we have several team members that are focused on that. So Lori Cook is our Director of Admissions and Enrollment, and she heads up both the services that we deliver on site as well as our outreach into the community as well. And then we have two team members, Angela Salinas and Francisco Ramirez, who are actively out in our community recruiting students. And we've recently just hired 2 part-time staff members because we really wanted to amp up our bandwidth in that area.
Tell us about the range of recruitment activities that you and your team are involved in.
Yeah, certainly. Lots of things. In fact, it just seems like we're constantly going a lot of directions all the time, but we are out in schools visiting with juniors and seniors to talk about their plans and how GRCC could fit into that. We host events here on campus tours, group visits, open houses. We go to college fairs, job fairs, all throughout the community. We work with job training type programs and transition programs. We also try to get the word out. We work a lot with our communications department in terms of advertising, getting our names on billboards, into publications, cable TV, you name it. We're a part of it right now.
Mm-hmm. You know, Eric, I've known you since I started working here. You've been here a little bit longer than I have. I've always sort of felt an affinity with you. I feel like, you're kind of a hipster. I'm kind of a hipster. Always looking at what the latest technology is bringing. And so could you tell me, how do things like the internet figure into your work in recruiting students?
The interwebs? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Things like MySpace.
You're going to invite me to MySpace. I think I still have a MySpace account. I don't know. You're allowing me to fly my nerd flag here. That's great.
All right.
We have to be in that space, obviously, with the generations that we're encouraging, the millennials, one in particular. We have to be in front of them in a lot of different areas. So we are involved with things like we developed a virtual tour, allow students to digitally explore our campus, whether it's from their mobile device or through Facebook, for instance. I think also some areas we've been very successful, like recruiting guest students for the summer. That's a population we've seen an increase in. And one of the reasons I think we've been successful there is the communication department's been doing very targeted social media advertising to those populations while they're at their home institutions, encouraging them to come spend time with us in the summer and take a class. And just recently, we're getting engaged in things like Pandora and music services where we can get in front of students. Yes, Pandora is
I know what that
music
is.
through the web.
I've heard of it.
Okay, good.
It's a box in Greek mythology. Bad things come out of it.
Well, in this case, we're hoping higher enrollment comes
out. All right. Can you give me some sense of the scope of like the high school visits you would do in a given academic year?
Yeah, it seems like we're out all the time, and we've really tried to ramp that up. Traditionally we've been out in the fall, but given our student population, and a lot of times they're first-generation college students, sometimes there are situations they might be underprepared or underserved getting into a college environment. We've been going out in the spring as well. Last year, during 2013-14, we actually did about 240 events out in the community, and were able to touch over 8,700 prospective students. And this year, though we're not fully through the year, we've already been involved in about 170 events and just over 7,400 students so far. So very busy, constantly on the go. When people call, we do our best to get out there. We've really kind of ramped up our resources so we can accommodate the many requests we get. The only time where we feel a little stretched is if they're outside of regions that we normally serve. We sometimes have to pick and choose a little bit and really focus on our home base a little bit more.
Now, we've actually also started doing some placement testing in local high schools. Why did we do that?
Well, again, I think it kind of goes back to the sense that students aren't sure about their next steps or what they need to do, and not a lot of students readily rush and sign up to take a test. And although it's really important for them to take care of that component to complete their admissions, we see value in working through the high school counselors that have a lot of reach and influence over students. And we've been delivering those tests, the AccuPlacer, on site at the high schools and gotten a great response for that. So we're out in 40, almost 50 high schools each spring delivering that on site.
If I'm a faculty member here or a staff member here, how can I help with recruiting students to GRCC?
We've actually really been ramping up that part of our collaboration and work with faculty recently. It's really part of the CAP that we've been working on 1.1.1. And
the first
CAP. The primary CAP. It's all about
Clearly.
the ones. Yes. But it really is about forming relationships with faculty, we have a lot of mechanisms and systems where we can get out in front of students, connect with them, get their contact information, follow up. But the best people in our community to share our story and talk about the programs are our faculty. We saw that recently at an open house where we really got a great department turnout. Watching that room with parents and students talking to our passionate faculty about what they're doing, what makes their programs unique, what kind of opportunities they provide students. It doesn't get any better than that. So right now we're just having conversations with faculty. We recently met with the theater department, biological sciences, culinary arts, and talking about how we can represent them digitally through our software. When a student says, hey, I want to know more about culinary arts, we have a scripted communication plan that goes out to them that Dan and his team put together. And then some departments are excited to find ways to host an open house on campus for students interested in their programs, or some departments are even willing to call students who might have an expressed interest in their programs. So we're open up to anything, but the more we can engage our faculty to tell about their programs and engage with students, I think the better off we're going to be.
I've heard talk that you are working with departments to develop something called microsites.
Back to the interwebs.
Yes. This sounds very high tech.
Yeah, actually, I'm really excited about this because when we talk about getting in front of students in a digital environment, sometimes web pages don't render well. You've probably been on your own phone before, pinching and squeezing and trying to look at content. And the microsites are actually...
I can get the web on my phone?
Yes, actually, and Pandora.
Okay.
So the microsites, what's unique about them is they show up great, whether it's in a smartphone, a tablet, or a computer screen. And so every department now has one, and we're open to faculty helping us refine those and make them as specific as possible. But anytime a student tells us they're interested in a program, we now have that tool to send out to them so they can explore more about those programs.
If I were a faculty member thinking about next year's faculty evaluation plan and what I might do to serve the college and my department, and I wanted to be more involved in enrollment, could I call you and you could find some work for me to do?
Very much so.
All
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah, I would love that opportunity.
If I'm recalling correctly, last year you were named one of the 40 under 40 local leaders to watch in Grand Rapids. Am I remembering correctly?
Yes, yep. I just snuck it in because I turned 40 this last year. So
okay.
Skin of my teeth.
Have you been being watched more closely?
I don't know. I haven't really noticed. Nobody peeking around the corners at me or stalking me or anything. Not that I noticed.
People on the street?
No.
Kind of just, hey, you're...
No autograph requests, nothing like that.
Well, now you will be famous here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
For coming. Now, part 3 of my 3-part podcast. I want everyone to know how happy I am and how excited I am that on March 23rd, Dr. Bill Pink will be on campus for his first day. He is, of course, assuming the role of Dean and Vice President of Workforce Development. I hope that when you see him, you welcome him. For the next several months, he will be working closely with Dr. Fiona Hurt, who is retiring, and they will be working on a leadership transition for the School of Workforce Development. I'm truly excited to be working with Bill, but I'm also sad to think that we'll be losing Fiona to what will undoubtedly be a very happy and productive retirement. Please join me when you see her in thanking her for her service to this college and in letting her know how much we'll miss her. Finally, if you would like to send a question to me to consider answering in one of my podcasts, I hope that you do that. Please also let me know if there's a faculty or staff member that you would suggest that I interview. I can be reached at provost@grcc.edu. To all of my colleagues, please remember that I am very, very proud of the work that you do. You are the highly esteemed, much appreciated faculty and staff of a very happy provost. Boom.
Twice in a row. You've been listening to the GRCC Provost Podcast, produced by GRCC Media Technologies. Join us next episode for more Provost.